Thanks so much for joining us for our first reunion edition of Catching Up With, the Alumni Association's ongoing interview series with interesting and notable Notre Dame alums. This afternoon, we're going to be interviewing three interesting Notre Dame alums from the 50-year class, back celebrating their 50-year reunion. So 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 3 o'clock. Hang around for all three. We're starting off with a member of the class who I'm sure needs no introduction on this campus. He's the 1964 Heisman Trophy winner, a proud member of the class of 1965. Ladies and gentlemen, John Huarte.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
John, thanks for being here.
That's wonderful.
So we're gonna, get to the magical 1964 season, but we like to kind of start off at the beginning. So, where did you grow up?
On a citrus farm in Anaheim, California.
The citrus farm, huh?
Yeah, oranges, lemons, and avocados. I'm one of 5 boys and a girl, and we all knew what a shovel and hoe was. And my dad had played pro baseball back in the 20s. Dad had 2 games with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig.
Wow.
So baseball was, we had a lot of stuff to throw with oranges. Entertainment was orange fights every day. Beautiful turn of the Santa Ana River, where it's real fertile ground before it goes out and drains in the Pacific. And a lot of the German farmers founded that area, Anaheim, California. It used to be grapes. And then a virus came in and knocked out all the vineyards. And after that, they came in with oranges, and later the name Orange County.
Oh, there we go. A history lesson here. So, growing up, were you always very active in sports, and was it just football, or did you play all kinds of sports as a kid?
No, all the sports. Being in the middle of the 5 boys, and I had the big ones to beat on me, and I had little ones I could chase. Dad was quite a skilled baseball player. He was an all-star in the minors, and we'd play pepper after work. And even though we couldn't throw the ball accurately to him, he had enough control of the bat. He could pop it right where he wanted, left or right or high or low. And so we just did that very frequently, just playing pepper, and the fact that we threw every day. All the brothers had good arms. I went to St. Boniface Grade School, Dominicans. All the play yard was all asphalt, so it was kind of a little scrapey. Then to Modern Day High School in Santa Ana, and had a good high school career there, and was able to get a scholarship, get the attention of Notre Dame. One of the reasons I got the attention, we're playing a high school game, and a Notre Dame guy named Jim Martin had taught me how to kick. And I kicked field goals. It was a straight-on approach, not the soccer, more powerful side. And I would kick off into about the 10-yard line. And Jim Martin, who had been an All-American here at Notre Dame and one of the first Navy SEALs, later Jim played 10 years of pro, he was telling me on my approach to the ball on the kickoff, my head was getting a little too forward. I might compare that to maybe hitting a golf ball. You got to sort of hold your head back a little bit. Well, I practiced doing that, and suddenly I'm kicking the ball in the end zone.
Wow.
I just magically pick up another 10 or 15 yards. So happens a guy named Brad Lynn, an assistant coach here at Notre Dame, watched me in a high school game, later told me that if I didn't play quarterback, I'd kick for Notre Dame.
Wow, that's great.
And so that was a tip from a Notre Dame great player, Jim Martin, getting me to adjust my head just a little bit, making a lot of difference in driving the ball.
Yeah, and growing up where you did and having such a successful high school career, no temptation to go to Southern Cal?
I thought about it. My brother David, who is 5 years ahead of me and celebrating here at Notre Dame this weekend, went here. My high school coach, Coach Dick Corey, a Notre Dame guy. So I was pretty much set for Notre Dame.
Well, the right decision, I'd say. When you arrived on campus, which dorms did you live in as a student?
I was at Stanford.
Stanford.
On the second floor is Stanford Hall. My roommate was Dan Ziemba, who I've met here today.
Oh, great. And what did you study at Notre Dame?
Business courses.
Your first couple years, on the team, you didn't play much after, knowing you had the talent and such a successful high school career. How frustrating was it for you, to not be getting much time on the field?
Oh, it was frustrating. No, I didn't win a letter as a freshman, sophomore, or junior. So I really just played that 1 year, my senior year.
Yeah.
Played a lot of scrimmage, a lot of football, but it was always on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
And the whole program was sort of turmoil at that point. It was really unsettled. Fortunately, we get a superior coach who comes in, Ara Parsegian, and he straightened everything out, and we ripped off 9 straight wins that year, fall of '64.
Yeah.
And lost the last game in the last minute and a half to USC, and that's always been painful.
Yeah. So backing up a little bit from there, when Ara kind of first arrived, after your junior season, how quickly did you know? How quickly could you sense that this was something different and this could be something special?
Well, the very first meeting we had was over at O'Shaughnessy. And there's probably 50, 60 guys in the room. And the meeting was over, and we started to exit. I was one of the first ones exiting. So I go out the door, and he'd go Longo and Bonavecchio and Huarte, So I stood by the door to see if he'd catch all the names. Ara caught all the names.
Wow.
On the first meeting. He knew the face and name of every guy.
Wow, that's something. Yeah. And so at what point, going into the year, I think when Ara arrived, you weren't considered necessarily the favorite to win the job or anything. At what point did Ara tell you you were going to be the quarterback for the 1964 season?
He told the whole team, you're all going to get a fair chance. They had no preconceived ideas. And we went out and did our drills and did our thing in spring ball. And after a few weeks, I was running first string. And I kept running first string. And then in the spring, we had a scrimmage in the stadium, and a good defensive end named Harry Long tackled me in the right way, but it drove my shoulder into the ground, and I separated my right shoulder. So that was kind of a question mark, and that was really an interesting thing. I'm over at the hospital here in South Bend, and a couple of doctors say, well, we think we got to put pins in there. And so I talked to Ara Parsegian on the phone and said they're going to operate tomorrow. And Ara says, like hell they are. He has Tom Pagna take me to Chicago, and a doctor friend there that has me hold the weights to pull down the arm. And they take a picture from the front, and you can see the collarbone comes in, there's a slight separation. It was traumatized, it was real painful. And he says, that'll be fine. You don't have to put that together. It's been that way ever since. So I started to swim and do things like that and exercise the right shoulder. So in a word, it came back to full strength. I could throw the ball and went on to have the big year.
Right.
Had that been operated on, I think I was finished.
Wow. You mentioned Tom Pagna there. Obviously one of Ara's key offensive assistants. Was around Notre Dame for a long time as an announcer. Unfortunately, passed away a few years ago. What impact did he have as kind of the offensive coordinator of sorts on your season that year?
Very much so. Tom, his personality was sort of cool, and he had a way of encouraging you. And we talked about specifics. For example, just taking the snap. Taking the snap is what happens. You do it so many times, you take it for granted. Then in a key game, there's a fumble. You have to really think about getting your hands and following the center out, because he's trying to block that big guy on the other side. And sometimes it's a cut block, or he has to reach to the sides. And you have to follow out. The discipline of taking the snap is a simple thing, but you got to do it right all the time. It's like landing an airplane.
Yeah.
You got to do it right all the time.
Right.
And then the other part was setting up your drops to pass. And you wouldn't think so, but there's a big difference between 5 yards deep and 7 yards deep. And they're not all the same. It'd be like you standing next to a wall. And as you get away from the wall, you can see better.
Right.
And so we worked on that first step, getting extra deep. Frequently it was 8 or 9 yards. And the offense is set up for sort of a semi-roll. And so you would take the snap, reach that first leg out far, and get over here. So now you're separated. It's just like the distance from these gentlemen right here.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between 4 yards and 7 yards.
Right.
And then the lanes open up. On the pass rush, you get the lanes to open up too. That's just a real simple basic thing that Tom Pagna drilled on.
Yeah.
And then we get into the games. Ara Parsegian used a signal system. And he had to use a little white card you could easily see. So the quarterback would be on the field, and you're looking through the huddle, and through the legs of your buddies, and you can just see if it's a run or it's a draw, it's a screen, whatever it is. That's how we ran the offense.
Yeah. The first game of that year was on the road at Wisconsin. They were pretty heavy favorites going into the game. It's you hadn't played much, as we talked about earlier in your career. Were you nervous going into that game?
No, I really wasn't. I was very attentive, but we had really moved the ball in the spring, and I felt confident where we moved the ball in the we didn't scrimmage much up before that.
Yeah.
You don't want to get you guys hurt. But it was a rainy day, and I knew we'd do all right.
Yeah.
And we did surprisingly well against a heavily favored Wisconsin team.
Yeah, you did more than all right. You had, I think, two touchdowns and 270 yards, which was a lot at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of your touchdowns over the course of the season were thrown to a former teammate, classmate of yours, who also unfortunately passed away a few years ago, Jack Snow. He was another guy who really benefited from, Ara coming in, hadn't played a ton, and ended up being an All-American, long pro career. How did the two of you have such kind of immediate chemistry on the field after not having played much in the years prior?
Well, I really didn't find that out until the funeral that I went to in Long Beach for Jack, and his high school coach was there. He told me the story that Jack had come back from Notre Dame kind of depressed. He wouldn't get a chance to play and things weren't going well. The high school coach advised Jack to go to Notre Dame, pick out a quarterback that you think will work well with you, and drill and drill and drill. And that's what we did. I went to summer school here 3 years. And during, Jack and I go out and do a lot of drills. I never had another receiver volunteer to come out and do all that running. And I used to look over at him, and he's doing all the sprints. I'm going back 7-8 yards. And we practice right over here where these buildings are. And we've done that 3 years. So what happens, you're working together, you just develop a little bit of a sense.
Right.
Very much like any of us playing basketball. You play with the same person a lot. You just kind of, the situation, you don't have to talk about it. You just know what they're going to do. And that's why we developed a good sense.
Yeah.
So that really helped a lot. That really helped a lot in our games. And I remember one particular game, we were driving to the south in the stadium, away from the opening, and we're about the 8-yard line. The play, since we had thrown to Snow so much, we wanted to move the ball around. The play called that you sprint to the right and throw a passing combination on the right, hopefully in the end zone there. And I did. We sprint out to the right, and everything's covered. And I look back to the left, and Jack Snow was like driving in towards the post, and he stops. And he knows darn well, and I do too, I'm going to throw it at the flag.
Yeah.
So I just drill it low and hard like an outside fastball. He comes back, makes the adjustment, touchdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those things you just can't really, have unless you have that working together.
Well, as you said, it just was a magical year, one win after the other, and they really weren't, I think, with the exception of maybe the Pittsburgh game, they really weren't close. You were kind of killing everyone. As you're going through the year and keep winning, get to 6-0, 7-0, 8-0, what did it feel like when you think back to the year before where you only won, 2 games? It must have just been kind of surreal.
It was really great. My whole dedication was just concentrating in the moment. This practice, this play, and I didn't really drift on other things, or interviews or anything.
Yeah.
I was just concentrating on execution. And that's how the offense was set up. And an important thing comes to mind. All the quarterbacks have different skills and so on. But Ara's genius, he kept me within that envelope of what I was doing. There were certain things I was good at, and he would build around that. He did not have me doing things that I was not particularly good at. So we had a lot of play action, a lot of semi-roll. We're a good screening team, and we had a good running game. But Ara was very adept at using the skill that he had, and then controlling that quarterback to do what he's stay in the area that he's good at.
Yeah.
And then you look good.
Right.
Well,
it worked to great effect.
It worked.
You had a great season. You end up, going from not winning a letter to winning the Heisman Trophy. Do you remember how you found out that you won the Heisman?
I was on the second floor of Walsh Hall, and George Keenan, a buddy, was down the hall. We had payphones. It's ringing. He answers, and I look down there, and he says, "John, You got it. That's how I found out the Heisman Trophy. Very much unlike the big deal in New York today.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, unfortunately the team was 9-0 and going to the SC game, and after probably some questionable calls by the refs, I think we can say, end up losing on kind of a last-second touchdown there to SC. How difficult was it to take that loss after being right there and with a big lead earlier in the game, kind of poised to win the national championship?
Yeah, it was just stunning.
Yeah.
And I really felt bad for Era, and the game slipped away, but it wasn't. When you look back and watch the film, you're not talking about gray hair calls. You're talking about invented things.
Yeah.
And that was always a question mark to my mind. How could you penalize somebody who didn't touch anybody?
Yeah.
His own teammates or them. Anyway, a lot of history. It was a great season, and but Era was just a highly respected, a very good coach, and a wonderful person.
Do you remember when you came back from that from California from that loss? Obviously, kind of a devastating loss. Do you remember the scene when you arrived back on campus?
Huge. I think the entire campus was receiving us here, right at the circle. That was really exciting.
Had kind of an impromptu pep rally, right?
Oh yeah, it was.
I think anyone who kind of knows the history of Notre Dame football knows that even though that team didn't win the national championship, it's really one of the greatest seasons in Notre Dame history, and was kind of a statement, right, that Notre Dame was sort of back on the national scene. How proud are you of that team's legacy?
Oh, it was terrific, because the years before that, it was very common in newspapers and articles talking about de-emphasizing football at Notre Dame. Notre Dame could not play with the big schools. And I would be out in practice looking at some talent around me, and I thought they were pretty good. We all thought we were pretty good. But I didn't have enough maturity or knowledge to realize we were really good.
Yeah.
We had the talent. So that was a real turnaround point. But there was serious talk about de-emphasizing football at Notre Dame in 1962-63. And then Era turned it around 64, and then off we went.
Are you still close with Era? What kind of impact has he had on you over the course of your life?
Era's had a wonderful impact on me and all the players, most everyone I know.
Yeah.
And I did talk to him on the phone just last week. I built up my courage to give him a call because I feel like I'm bothering him. And so I said kind of casually, "Well, Era, how you feeling?" He says, "Well, pretty good for 93. He's a wonderful man. And I was lucky to be there. And I think that's a lot of life. You prepare best you can, and then there's some real luck in there too, in business or football. But you got to stay with it. Once you quit, the luck's not going to show up.
Yeah. You ended up getting drafted in the second round by the New York Jets.
Right.
You spent most of your NFL career as a backup quarterback.
Right.
Was that tough to go from Heisman winner to backing up guys like Joe Namath as when you were in the...
Well, that was just a marketing deal. I didn't understand that at the time. I was drafted high because of Notre Dame and the following New York City, and it helped them sell 40,000 season tickets in Shea Stadium.
Wow.
The real guy they wanted was Joe Namath, flashy, long ball, and so on. I never took one snap at New York. Never ran one down. They brought me in, sell the tickets, and then traded me to Boston, where I played a little bit with a quarterback named Babe Pirelli. Then Philadelphia Eagles, that team went through bankruptcy. Then I became a free agent and signed on with the Kansas City Chiefs and went to the Super Bowl. I ended up with a Super Bowl ring,
Nice.
courtesy of Lenny Dawson, smart, clever quarterback out of Purdue.
Yeah.
Tom Flores was my roommate. He later coached the Raiders. So I had 3 years there at Kansas City. Then he got traded to the Bears. I didn't play there neither. And then I was out of football for a year, and the phone rings, and they're starting a new league. And so they wanted me to fly up to Canada. And so I fly to Montreal, and they're talking about a new league and the Memphis team. And so they gave me a bonus of $30,000 in 1974. So I flew home, and my wife says, "John, is the league good?" I said, "I don't know, but the check was." the league lasted 2 years, 74, 75, played a lot of football, had a lot of fun. And then I was a total of 10 years, and I was out of it and joined my brother Greg, who was in the tile business.
Yeah.
And began a very small, modest tile company. This turned out to be a nice business for the family.
Yeah, it started out, I think with one store, and now you've got like
23.
25,
Yeah, 23. Yeah.
How did you manage to grow the company as big as you did?
Well, very much like football. You got disappointments and bad days, but you just have to keep going and fix things.
Yeah.
It started at a very modest place in San Diego, and now it's there's about 6 big companies in the West Coast. We're one of those. Then there's like 100 small little companies. We have 700 employees. We import about 3,000 to 4,000 containers a year. We receive them at the port in Houston and in LA. We got through the recession. The recession shocked a lot of people, including us, and you have to do the corrections. And then we came out of the recession. We're back on the plus side now.
That's great. Are you still very active with the company? Are you kind of retired now? How do you spend your time nowadays?
Part of it is just staying out of their way. We have a good a good management crew, 2 sons and a son-in-law in the company, and Bob Traxler, the president, Gary Scarston, chief financial officer. And my wife, Eileen, has been extremely helpful in key personnel things during the history of the company. So it really is a family business with a great deal of help by my wife and a lot of sacrifice. And how so? We moved 23 times.
Wow.
5 kids, and during my illustrious football career and business, moved a lot. So
yeah.
We have it pretty nice now in Pacific Palisades by Malibu. And Eileen's enjoying that, and the grandkids, which we're blessed with 12 grandkids.
Wow.
So our life now is grandkids and sports, and great fun.
And do you still follow the Irish? Do you watch it?
Oh yeah, sure.
Optimistic about this coming season?
The new offensive coordinator, is it Sanderson?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, Sanderson.
Who did very well. Sanford. Wide open game at Boise State University.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious to see if that wide open mentality is there.
All right, I think we're going to take some questions from the audience now. If you'd like to pose a question for John, raise your hand. We got some mics coming around. Anybody?
No.
Everybody's shy. Here we go, right up front.
John, what's your favorite non-football memory of Notre Dame?
Let's see. Favorite non-football memories at Notre Dame? Hitchhiking through Indiana. Summer school, you didn't have any money. Well, I got a story there. I went to a Catholic grade school, and I'd heard these kids talking about something called allowance. I said, "What's that?" And he said, "That's where you get money from your mom and dad." Well, I went home, and my dad's a rough arms farmer, and I said, "Dad, can I have some money?" He looked at me and said, "No, Johnny." He says, "You learn to get your own money." So at Notre Dame, I came here with that. I didn't have any money. And but I went to summer school and had a roommate named John Lyons. And they gave me the tickets for my meal tickets. And I had about $120 worth. Well, I discounted them to John for about $80, and he gave me $80 cash. And that's how I got through summer school. Saved enough money. Then I had a wagon to deliver to the different libraries on the campus. And the different books, moving engineering to law, what have you. And I would shuttle that wagon around during summer school, and I'd look up and I'd see football players coming the other way. I'd take a detour. I'd take a left or a right, because I didn't want them teasing me about pulling this damn wagon around the campus, you know. And I got paid for that. And I think it's really true. Particularly, you learn how to scrape, and you learn how to find ways to get money. And that's, so I'm not a big fan of, people have to give me some money. Yeah.
Anybody else? Right next to him there?
Are any of your 5 kids a fellow alum?
No, they went to University of San Diego, two to Pepperdine, and one to St. Mary's. You also want to stay in California.
Another question back there.
True, you had to find a ticket to the last game of the '63 season?
I don't know the answer to that question. To the last game of the '63 season?
Yeah, before the year before Eric came.
I don't understand the question.
He's saying, were you sitting in the stands and did you need to get a ticket?
Oh, did I do for me?
Yeah.
No, they brought me along and suited me up, but I didn't play. Yeah.
Anybody else? Question? There we go.
Tell us a little bit about our historic coach, Huey DeVore, and how he interacted with you your freshman year.
Do you mean when they used the quarterbacks for tackling
Yes,
practice?
Exactly.
That was under Joe Kuharich. Very first practice here at Notre Dame, we all get together, and I'm out there. And of course, coming from California, you basically didn't have a lot of Polish and Czechs and a lot of big people. And so we're all together in a big group, and Joe Kuharich says, guards and tackles over there and receivers over there, and he says, linebackers and quarterbacks, come with me. And I go, this doesn't sound good. They lined up the quarterbacks and went and used us for tackling practice. It was Joe Kuharich standing there with his burly arms and saying, growling, you quarterbacks got to be tough. And the drill lasted 10 minutes and we got through it, but that was my first drill at Notre Dame, tackling practice on the quarterbacks. Huey then was our coach later, and God bless his memory, loved and dear, but I think football had gone back. Huey, you took a coach from 20, 30 years before and put it into a present deal, and just like everything changes, coaching changed a lot. So Huey had a lot on his shoulders in that year of '63, and we only won 2 or 3 games.
All right. I think we're gonna
do
we got
it.
one more
There's
here.
a buddy of mine
Marty.
over there.
John, yeah, things have changed for sure. Some football players are unionizing. What's your thought about student athletes getting paid?
Yeah, where do you stop? I just recited the story. I found ways to get money, discounting meal tickets and, pulling wagons around the campus or working. A lot of my classmates had jobs on campus. I think that's very comfortable. I'm not a fan of the idea of, besides a scholarship, that to provide money, and the answer is, well, I don't have any. Well, go get some. That's kind of how I look at it. That was my experience. I don't think it's changed much.
Okay, we got Marty here. The last question, I think.
I don't know if I got the last question, so I'll make it a long one.
Okay.
Okay.
John, when you went to Chicago, you really went to, I believe it was Elmhurst, to Dr. Dick Cronin.
That's who it is, Dr. Dick Cronin. And his son lives across the street from me out in California.
And his daughter, Cynthia Cronin Cahill, is on the scholarship board in Chicago. And her son is coming here this coming year. And I hear all about the stories with Dr. Dick Cronin, who also played football here
Wow.
before you. So he was the guy who
That was
told
the
you he
man.
didn't need surgery.
That's the man that saved my career.
And he's a great Notre Dame guy with a huge Notre Dame family.
Okay, well, thank you for refreshing that for me. Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask Dr. Jim Muller to come up here. We've got one more story for you. Dr. Muller is going to be our next guest, so hang around for that. But he's going to tell a story that involves the two of these guys here. Here's your.
Thank you. So John and I were on a canoe trip, and it must have been '64.
Yep.
Before you became the lead quarterback, and John said to me on that canoe trip, he said, Jim, do you think I should go out for football senior year or take the Yankees offer? Because you had a pitching offer, right?
Yes.
So I said, John, you're the third string quarterback. Your shoulder's been dislocated. Take the baseball deal. Now, he did not take my advice and won the Heisman Trophy. So I have, in my career, I've been an academic cardiologist, and I've been asked many times by young cardiologists, Dr. Muller, what kind of career advice can you give me? And I said, "You don't want any advice from me." And I said, I told John Huarte not to play football the year before he won the Heisman Trophy. The other thing I will say about that canoe trip, we went from Ely, and it was a nice day like this. It was probably June, and we portaged 3 lakes. We got way in the wilderness, 6 Notre Dame guys, and we had no warm equipment, and a cold wave set in, really cold. And I recall being in a tent, and it was one of those things where who gets to sleep on the outside to stay warm and maybe alive, but you could have lost a Heisman Trophy winner there. John, you remember that?
Oh, we had a great fun. Just the young idealistic college kids paddling up there, but it was great fun. Good stories, and we made it. Bill Rom's, Jim Crow name, and I came up with a name. That was Bill Rom's Canoe in Ely, Minnesota.
And didn't you go back the next year and jump in?
I did. Took my dad and 2 brothers with me, and we had a close call. Got in the water. The water's very cold up there, and you don't last long. Well, we made it to a rocky cliff, barely, and that could have been a disaster. Yeah, but typical Californians fooling around in Minnesota in the cold country, you don't quite realize. Anyway, we got through it, and it was a great memory, beautiful country. And this man here, of course, is Nobel Peace Prize winner, and he and other doctors conceived the idea with some Russian cardiologists and said, what are we pointing all these missiles at each other for? No one's going to win anything. It'd just be a disaster for humanity. And Jim is one of those, with others, took the lead in trying to educate people throughout the world. They're not thinking right if you're thinking in terms of nuclear. And anyway, God bless you and your thoughts and what you're doing.
So, thank you, John. And I would like to say that that Russian work started with Mr. Czech. I don't know if any of you took Russian from Mr. Czech, but he gave A's to everybody. But it helped me get into med school. But I can still see him walking across the campus there. He had a polio, and he dragged that one leg, and he would say, "Господин Müller, здравствуйте," and I would say back what I was supposed to say. And those 4 years of Russian led me to work with Russian doctors, which led to the Nobel Prize. But you mentioned in business, John, there are a lot of things that go wrong. There were a lot of things that went wrong in that peace movement, and we just had to kind of keep going. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that the tradition that Notre Dame football kind of displays in all its beauty of let's keep going, let's figure out how to do this, let's practice excellence, like you're talking about a 5-yard drop or a 7-yard drop, that was all kind of, you were a role model for me in how to face problems. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. All right.
All right, well, we're going to hear more from Dr. Jim Muller, and we're going to take a short break in a few minutes, and then we'll have Ed O'Dana at 3 o'clock, so please stick around. But first of all, let's give a round of applause for John Huarte.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.